Okay, I think this is working. Okay, I think this is working. I can see my face. And all right, I don't know how to do some things, but how it does work. Okay, cool. So, anyways, hi, I'm Lauren Trullo, and I am following an awesome friend Uzaire's recommendation and doing a little bit of a deep dive today to go over learning meta ads and going over benchmarks specifically. So, a lot of small business owners that are new to advertising on Facebook and Instagram don't know where to start. It's an overwhelming platform, and not only do you have to figure out what offer and audience you're aligning yourself with, you also have to be able to measure and understand which KPIs will set up your campaigns for success. So, a question that I've been asked a lot lately is which KPIs matter and what are the benchmarks to understand the threshold of scaling or the opportunity to turn off those campaigns. So, what we're going to go over today are four components. We're going to talk really briefly about knowing which numbers you need to understand and know before you start launching your Facebook ads, as well as any primary and secondary KPIs to keep your eyes on, and then wrapping it up where I'm going to show you how you can build a custom dashboard inside your Facebook platform so you know which KPIs to measure and to follow to for success. And hi there. Hi. Cool. So, first things foremost, I'm going to be talking about the KPIs and benchmarks that are allowing you to optimize before the click. There are offline conversions that happen, but what I'm specifically speaking today are which KPIs and benchmarks to pay attention to while inside Facebook Ads Manager when managing your meta ads. Side note, meta ads is inclusive of WhatsApp, Messenger, Instagram, and Facebook, but we'll be interchanging between meta ads and Facebook ads in the conversation today. So you want to know specific KPIs to measure your campaigns against. And again, we're only focusing on the optimizations before the click and those numbers to look at to evaluate the efficacy of your Facebook and Instagram ad campaigns. Okay, before you launch your ads, the numbers you want to know before you go, of course, are going to be things that you as a business owner are going to need to set as your guardrails for success. Those include what cost you're willing to pay for a lead. So at Mongoose Media, we do predominantly lead generation and e-commerce marketing for our clients. And so we always need to know before we jump into any campaign, what is the assumed cost per lead a customer is willing to pay before we start investing. Because if someone's saying, I'm expecting $1 and then leads are $12, is a big gap. So managing expectations is really important. Understanding your cost per lead, what you're willing to pay. And that can also be a range, knowing what you anticipate and then what you're willing to stretch. The next component that goes into that stretch is what are you willing to pay for a qualified lead? Facebook ads is a really, really great resource to find top of funnel individuals and to engage down funnel with your existing audiences. So what that means is you can get high quantity really fast. So if you want quantity versus quality, Facebook 100% is one of the best advertising channels to go after in terms of the bang for your buck. However, it can dilute your quality a little bit because you are capturing such a wide net. Pros and cons of that being the larger the net you cast, the more potential prospects of qualified leads you'll go after that you may not have thought were in market for your ideal opportunity. So you're going to want to know what are you willing to pay for that qualified lead. Depending on if you're doing e-commerce and your cost of goods is like 60% and your margin is sub 30, you have a very small margin of which you're willing to pay for that cost per lead. But if you're doing a larger product that's ranging from $1,800 to $450,000, that's the most expensive product we have advertised on Facebook. You have a threshold of what you're willing to do, and then of course, based off that qualified lead, if you're doing lead-based campaigns, the more questions you ask, the higher the quality, but of course, the decrease in your conversion rate, therefore the increase in your cost. So anyways, you want to know before starting your campaign, what are you willing to pay for a lead? And then further, what are you willing to pay for a qualified lead? And the third number you want to know before you go is going to be the cost you're willing to get someone to leave a meta property and visit your actual website. I knew that was it. 2 seconds. Sorry. Sorry, I'm like live right now. That's so funny. Sorry, I knew that was going to happen. I'm so sorry. Okay, So jumping in further, I'm going to see if I can pause this really quickly. I'm not able to. Okay, I'm going to mute myself. 2 seconds. Sorry. It was there. You say just do it anyway, so I'm doing it as crazy as that is, because whatever, it's fine. Okay, so going back into what we're talking about, the numbers you want to know before you go is how much you're willing to pay for someone to leave a meta property and then go actually view your page. So think of it as if you're on the if you have a brick and mortar store and you're getting someone to actually physically come into your store, what would you be willing to pay for them? The cost per landing page is what you're willing to pay to get someone off of a meta property, stop looking at engagement photos, stop looking at Coachella posts, and actually visit your website. 4, you want to know what you're willing to pay for your new customer acquisition. Your cost per customer acquisition in beauty tends to be between $60 to $75 when you know you have a high return rate. Whatever that cost per customer that you're willing to pay, you want to make sure that you know that number out the gate. 5, what is your average order value and your lifetime customer rate? So if you know what the lifetime customer value, or the average order value, you can also back into that cost per customer if you don't have that number. You know that your return rate is 6 and your average order is 40, you're willing to pay potentially up to 120 on that customer who's going to anticipate possibly spend 240. So you have that threshold. So that's just a number to help you find that cost per acquisition. And then the last one are your conversion rates. What do you currently convert your leads to customers if you're capturing leads in other channels at the moment? If you don't have that number, that's totally fine. Facebook is a really, really great place to get that number really quickly. And then the other conversion number is what is your current landing page? If you have an existing offer page, landing page that you have traffic going to, what percentage of people that come on that page do convert themselves as well? Hi, sincere too. Woohoo! Whole party of like 3. My mom too. So we have those 6 numbers: cost you're willing to pay for lead, cost you're willing to pay for a qualified lead, cost you're willing to pay to get someone to leave a meta property and visit your page, cost you're willing to pay for a new customer acquisition, what your average order rate or lifetime value of a customer is, and then your conversion numbers, both on the conversion for leads to customer and conversions on the landing page or offer page that you have. So now we can get into the nitty gritty of what numbers and definitions from Meta we're using in our primary and secondary benchmarks. So out the gate, you've probably heard this before, it's 50. Meta needs 50 conversion events per audience in a 7-day period. It's not per campaign, it's per audience. So if you have one campaign with 5 audiences, each audience needs 50 unique conversion events in a 7-day period. And those conversion events depend on which objective you're optimizing your campaign for. 2, there's a CBO versus ABO. CBO stands for campaign budget optimization. ABO stands for ad budget optimization. So those are just definitions when you're jumping in, depending on how you're distributing your financial or support, your pay inside your campaigns. You're also going to know before jumping in and looking at your numbers, you want to have statistically significant amount of data before you start making decisions. If you've only spent $2 on a campaign and it hasn't converted, that's not necessarily enough. I often use 3.5 times the cost per customer I'm willing to spend. So if I need my customer to be $20 and I've spent 65 or 85, then at that point I'll make a decision and say this isn't going to work for me and I'll relaunch. Another number to be mindful of is $10. It's how much I recommend you spend per audience per day if that's your low. Again, you want to work backwards knowing that you need 50 conversions in a week. I recommend, if your budget allows you, to kick off your campaigns with the assumption of 100 conversions in the 7-day period so that you give Facebook enough data to allow you to make the conversions that you need. Last component as a number to understand. Unfortunately, Facebook is a pay to play. While absolutely you can make conversions at a smaller budget, if you're an e-commerce brand, and especially if you're in the beauty space, which is a lot of our clients, you should anticipate to spend at least $180 per day per campaign. That's the industry average for a beauty product e-commerce campaign right now as of this recording. So long story short, as Meta continues to improve their algorithm, media buying is going to be less about which toggles and knobs you turn, it's not day trading. It's not which you're putting where and which campaign you're optimizing for, which conversion window. It's going to be giving the algorithm a lot more space. And media buying on Facebook is be more about the offer and the audience and having that cohesive agreement. So the point of this, of telling you which KPIs and benchmarks matter, is to let you know that it's overwhelming and you really don't need to pay attention to the hundreds of options Facebook gives you. I'm just going to go over my favorite 8 and give you the benchmarks of what you can know. What we've seen as an agency spending millions of dollars a year on meta ads and has been reigning true for the last 4.5 years that Mongoose Media has been running Facebook ads. So without further ado, and hi, Diva. Primary metrics. So the primary metrics that you want to look at whenever evaluating the efficacy of your Facebook campaign always starts with results. When you're telling Facebook what you want to have either purchases, have leads, have landing page views, whatever objective you're choosing at the initiation of your campaign, the results is the most important number. There are lots of secondary numbers that will make your campaigns look good, but at the end of the day, it's about cash in, cash out. And if you're not getting the results you need to evaluate the campaigns. So for your results, those can be leads, those can be purchases, those can be landing page views. Those are 3 different objectives that you can optimize for, and it's recommended based off of where you are in your budget. If you're a beauty e-commerce brand that doesn't have $200 a day for a campaign, you can absolutely still optimize for purchases, but you want to make sure that you're following what those results are. And if you're not seeing the ideal numbers that you want out the gate, know that this is a long haul game and investment. You're spending a lot less to get folks to see your website. And if you remember the numbers you set before and you know that you're willing to pay 75 cents for a stranger to check out your website and hear your offer or pitch for the first time they're visiting the page, take a breath, and then you can reevaluate to see, is the offer working? The other KPIs will keep going on. So after you care about your results, the next number you need to look at is your cost per result. And if you're optimizing for a lead, I recommend having your lead sub $12. The most that we are capturing leads for is $65. You have to remember that we're optimizing for campaigns that have hundreds of thousands of dollars of value. So $65 is really nothing for how qualified those leads are, because we have a book of questions that we ask. We generate currently leads anywhere from 12 cents to about $7, depending on a wide variety of items, but that's the threshold I recommend that you pay attention to for cost per results. On that cost per lead, leads really don't matter as much as the conversion does. So you can get, leads for 12 cents, but if they're, converting at 2%, it might be worthwhile of doubling or tripling what you're willing to pay for that cost per lead by adding in an additional question for a higher qualified lead. Hi, Ed. For your landing page views, so again, Facebook is one of the cheapest places to get people to leave and interrupt their social experience to check out your page and essentially listen to your online pitch. What you want to look for your landing page views, we see is about 12 cents to $3. The difference between 12 cents and $3 is quite large. Often when we have those higher $3, and we have seen as high as $6, it's because the site's taking too long to load. So I can only optimize up to the click so often, or that landing page view that first time that pixel triggers in your initial campaigns. So you really do want to aim for a sub $3 cost per landing page view. And then a whole host of things can make that difference, but 9 out of 10 times when we evaluate reducing someone's cost per landing page view, it's because the website itself takes too long to load or the mobile experience is less than stellar. So components that you can be mindful of is like a bonus one. If you have purchase conversion value, we're talking about cost per result. Knowing your purchase conversion value is an awesome number to be mindful of. If you have e-commerce products, it's really easy with the Shopify integration. If you have a lead generation or class project, it does take a little bit of extra work. You need to go into your events manager and tell Facebook, based off of a custom URL, if someone reaches that destination, the value of that landed page. So if you have a thank you page after a $1,200 offer or a $6,000 course, someone can only access that page because they've made the purchase. You tell Facebook that page is worth $6,000 to you. The third most important for primary is going to be your return on ad spend. We do a lot with e-commerce, so that's where you have to have the purchase conversion value inside of it. So knowing the actual purchase conversion value can be really nice when you're like, oh, look, I have $80,000 in directly attributed sales this month in Facebook from a $24,000 ad spend. Those numbers are great, much easier when you're e-commerce. Again, it does require that you do extra steps if you're not e-commerce. In general, what I optimize for with ROAS is a 1.8 or a 2.2 for cold audiences. So I know the value of a new customer, especially for our products that have repeat purchases. For cold audiences, I'm absolutely okay with paying 1.8. I consider that a self-liquidating campaign. I know that there's other things that take place for that initial purchase to occur, but Facebook tends to be the largest pipeline of new customers for our brands. Therefore, 1.8 for cold audiences, I'm keeping and scaling that all day long. For other clients that have more conservative budgets, we will put the floor, the threshold starting as 2.2. What I do want for the overall ROAS, and this can be quite controversial because I have been known to get really stellar return on ad spend. Like I still have eights and one that has an 11 return on ad spend for some of our campaigns, but I actually don't see those as wins. I see those as bigger opportunities because I don't want the overall ROAS for the account to be over 3.2. So my personal opinion on that is if you have a 5 return on ad spend, you can spend a lot more and get a lower return on ad spend, but you're increasing the number of customers and therefore increasing the lifetime value and end number long term. I try not to make any decisions based on a 5 p.m. cash out, but one that I won't regret in 5 years from now. So that's where if I have an account that's a 5 or a 7 return on ad spend and we're spending a lot, I see that as a total need to, okay, we need to open up our audiences and we need to test new audiences and bring that back down to a 3.2 so that we can keep scaling and scaling and scaling. Anyways, as I know that's quite controversial, but 3.2 is what my overall goal is for ROAS, and 1.8 is where I'm comfortable paying for a cold audience. You know that if you have an initiate checkout within 2 days, absolutely, you can totally get like 24s. You can get really high digit return on ad spend, which is why I look at the overall ROAS for the whole account. The fourth most important number for your primary KPIs is going to be your unique click-through rate. Many of us know click-through rate, CTR, as what percentage people are clicking and engaging with your ad. Meta has a lot of places you can click. If you've got videos and you click on that play button, that's a click. If you comment, that's a click. If you like, that's a click. If you go off of that ad to the Facebook page, that's a click. I only care about unique click-through rates. And that's because I want to make sure I'm tracking what it is for people to leave the ad and go to the destination I'm specifically directing them to. Benchmark for a unique click-through rate, 1% is good, 2% is better. And if you're doing over 3%, you're crushing it. 1% is good. It's not uncommon, especially for e-commerce clients, to see lower than a 1% click-through rate when you've got just a product that you're showing and it's just like a picture of whatever that product is. If you're looking to diversify your creative, I always recommend, if you have a product, doing a product standalone, a product in someone's hands with a partial body, and then a product with a full body or outside of human experience as like a graphic overlay. So it's in the physical environment that it's being interacted and engaging with. So you're asking, interesting, 3.2, it's likely a higher ROAS, you're missing opportunities. Exactly. And yeah, 1% is really good. Do not get down. You have to remember who you're talking to on Instagram and Facebook. You're competing with people that are bragging about how cute their dog is, or at least you are if you're looking at my Instagram. And you're interrupting someone's feed. So getting 1 out of 100 to engage with you, that's signaling that it's important and relevant enough, or equally as irrelevant, because when I talk about any ad campaigns that we run, it always comes down to the offer and the audience. And you want your offer to be so sticky that anyone who aligns with it is like, yes, 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 me. And everyone who's like, oh my gosh, I'm absolutely never buying a lunar year edition of this Moleskine calendar. Heck no. You want to repel as much as you want to attract in your ads. So 1% is good. Be proud of that. 2%, give yourself a really big high five. And if you're over 3%, like bow down. That's freaking awesome. It's a really good number to get at. And based on different campaign objectives, if you're doing a traffic campaign because you want to be higher in the funnel, bring awareness to maybe blogs that you're talking about, you can anticipate click-through rate to be about 4 to 6%. But in general, like 1%, don't be mad or disappointed about that at all. So the last most important primary KPI that I think is most relevant when you're evaluating the efficacy of your Facebook and Instagram ad campaigns is going to be your CPM. Your CPM stands for cost per 1,000 impressions, and we all know that mille is Latin because why not be fancy, and that's the term that it goes by. So on Facebook, you should not pay more than $25 for a CPM. It's a very affordable platform, so you should not be paying more than $25 to get your ad and offer in front of your audience. That is not always the case. When you have warm retargeting and your audience is small, maybe you're viewing people that have visited your site in the last 7 days, you're going to be paying a lot higher of a CPM. You're not going to be reaching that many people. If you have only 100 individuals that have visited your website in the last 7 days, you should anticipate spending more on that CPM. But especially with cold, sub 25. You should never be paying more than $25. You got an e-commerce campaign and you're trying to really just get your product out in front of others. Catalog sales should have a $3 to a $4 CPM. That conversion objective is really great for building retargeting audiences later, because you want people to see like, oh, check out this like really pretty moleskin calendar. I keep like showing it. I hope it's showing up and high enough. If not, just know that it's pretty. So sub $25, especially for cold audiences, and anticipate it being higher for warm. I would never be comfortable spending more than $50 on a CPM for any audience. If your CPM is $50 plus, even for warm, evaluate reducing your spend. You're probably spending too much and you're bothering them, because then you'll want to look at frequency, which is a secondary number. Or two, you might have ad fatigue. Your creative offer isn't sticking up enough, and there's a bit of ad blurriness going on. So $25 is your floor. If you're working with an agency, $20 should be your floor, or your ceiling, rather. You don't want to spend more than $20 if you have an agency, because they're giving you their experience that they can find more affordable audiences. The more you're paying for CPM, the more competitive that audience is, or the smaller that audience can be. Again, that's why warms can be quite expensive. So those are the 5 primary. We talked about the results, the number of results you're getting, the cost per result, the ROAS, your unique click-through rate, and CPM. So those are the 5 most important numbers to look at when evaluating a campaign. And then I've got a few more that are secondary ones that are really good to put in your dashboard, because these are ones that you want to pay attention to. Earlier, I mentioned that cost per leads is cool and all, but it doesn't matter if you're not getting the end result, which is conversions. So what you'll want to do is set up custom conversions or identify what your funnel is. Again, e-commerce, the Shopify integration is really easy, so it spells it out for you. And you can add those added carts, initiate checkouts, and all of those standard events. But if you've got a campaign where you're generating leads, you want to be mindful of the next step, like those micro conversions in that funnel. So if the first is capturing the lead and then making it to that secondary landing page, you want to know the cost per getting to that converted page. And then if there's an upsell, what's the cost to get to that third destination? If you have a 2-step lead form, you want to know the cost so that you can measure the drop off. And that way you can make decisions of your offline events in your on Facebook campaigns. But again, just setting those up, you want to know what those costs per are, so that you can understand like, oh, I'm paying 12 cents a lead, but it's costing me $85 per upsell destination, where it's a $7 upsell. Then you can know like 12 cents, they're garbage leads. You'd rather be paying closer to that $7 if that drop off rate is like near nothing. The second component in secondary metrics is cost per click. I know a lot of people think of that as like super important. I consider the unique click-through rate more important, because the engagement on the ad is what I care about more than the actual click, because I can always retarget someone's engagement with a better offer. But your cost per click on Facebook, you want it to be sub 75 cents. You don't want to be spending too much for someone to click and engage with your ad, because social media platforms does allow that affordability in your campaigns. But one thing to be mindful of is where you're potentially willing to pay more than that is understanding the click that they're taking to get to your unique landing page. What's the conversion rate? If you're converting that landing page at 50%, who cares if it's 75 cents? Keep doing it as long as it's a cost neutral campaign. But generally speaking, again, with e-commerce specifically, you want your pages to convert, or your site to convert about 4%. If you're not doing e-commerce and you're doing more of like a coaching program, 5 to 7% tends to be the goal. Now, that's not necessarily easy to achieve if you haven't done any conversion rate optimization on the landing page, but it does give you a industry norm, 4% for e-commerce and 5% for non-e-commerce pages. So sub 75 cents for your cost per click. And then you know if it's higher than that, it's time to evaluate the offer, so the ad creative and copy, because it's not sticky enough. And also look at that primary number, your click-through rate, especially your unique click-through rate, because that will tell you even sooner if you're not at least at a 1%, say you're at a 0.5%, If you can double that click-through rate, you should be able to minimize your cost per click at least by 40%. The third secondary number that I find really important when evaluating campaigns is going to be your frequency. This is just how often someone is seeing your ad in a 7-day period. So in a 7-day period, you don't want to be, that shoe that follows you everywhere and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm unsubscribing, stop chasing me. But 4% is the frequency that I'm like most comfortable with. That gives someone the chance to see your campaign every other day and maybe twice on the weekend based off how often they're using it. Cold audiences, though, because I've just found that broad audiences and really large lookalike audiences are doing better than any custom avatar audiences that I've been building out. My cold audiences based on spend tend to still be like a 1.2 frequency. You want to be very mindful of your frequency with your retargeting. I've come on many successful ad accounts that are, positive ROAS, really impressive, and have like 9 and 11 frequency on their warm campaigns. And you're just like bullying and abusing your audience with your creative too much that it's like exhausting and overwhelming. Thanks, Ativa. So yeah, 4% is what I'm most willing to do. 2 or 3% is pretty good, especially for the warm side. If you do have a large diversity of creative, then you might be more flexible, closer to that 4%, even 5%. But these are like accounts doing $100,000 a month in ad spend, because that frequency, depending if you're looking at the campaign or ad set or ad level, can vary. And so if you have like 7 different retargeting ads that you're showing someone, then maybe you're more comfortable with the higher frequency. But again, 4% is my personal max. The last component, oh no, actually that was, I rewrote. Oh. Okay, so then those are the 3 secondary ones. Measuring your down funnel custom conversions events so you can see and track the impact your campaigns from launch through other micro conversions to your ultimate sale. Your cost per click, you want it to be sub 75 cents, and frequency, you want it to cap it at 4%. So while you're looking at Facebook ads and you're evaluating in the dropdown the different dashboards you can view, it's overwhelming. There are hundreds of different metrics that you can look at and evaluate. But if you're a small business owner, those are the 8 that I highly recommend you looking at. There are others that are interesting, and yeah, they matter fine. But like at the end of the day, you really want to look at cash in, cash out. If you're like, oh, I want to see the data and I want to like boost my ego and all the effort I spent into building this beautiful campaign, some numbers to look at that are really rewarding, especially video, because video is converting on Instagram at a much higher rate than any of our static or even GIF images. If you can do these longer videos at 15 seconds, looking at the video view, so video view through is 10 seconds, through play is 10 seconds on Facebook and Instagram. So that's nice because they've gotten past that like optimizing for second 0 phase, and they're like, okay, I've listened to what you had to say. Think of it when you're walking into a Macy's or a department store and someone's saying, hey, want to spray yourself? Like, come check out this new fragrance. You could just keep walking by. That'll be like your sub 3 seconds. But if you stay and listen, and they'll tell you like what the notes are, but you're like totally disengaged, like, oh no, sorry, I need to go find my mom. That's essentially like the through play of video view engagement. But what's really, really nice if you do have video campaigns is to look at what percentage of your audience progressed to 25% and 75%. If you have individuals watching 75% of your campaign, you should anticipate like less than a 10% are going to drop off at that point, unless you've just been really pitchy and selling the whole time. But those are really rewarding numbers to evaluate work spent on video, since those are much more time consuming than other types of ads. The other component to look at will be reach and impressions. Just really quickly, impressions is how many time your ad is served on a device. Reach is how many sets of eyeballs actually had visibility to your ad. So impressions, it can be really annoying because you're paying for impressions. CPM is cost per 1,000 impressions. So I could be on my Instagram feed and your post is all the way down. I haven't scrolled up for it, but because it's preloaded, you've paid for it. But reach will tell you how many people actually got in front of it, but you're paying by impression. So you just want to see, and note that there is going to be a drop off for sure. You can see like 34,000 impressions and then anticipate like 28 to 30,000 actually reach. So that's just like one thing to be mindful of that can get really confusing. But it's just a nice number to think of. Wow, like I reached 28,000 individuals. And when you're comparing the cost of benchmarks and KPIs of Facebook ads to traditional advertising like print, where you're spending maybe 17 cents per distributed postcard, you could be like, wow, I spent $28 and got in front of 1,000 people. And then you can measure whatever those numbers are. That would be a $28 CPM. And you can say, like, yes, I feel good about that number, especially when comparing to other traditional advertising types. So that those are all the benchmarks and KPIs. I'm sure this went like way longer or shorter than it needed to be. I'm not quite sure, but I really do appreciate the awesome humans that are tuning in for my very first attempt at this. I don't think I can, because I failed to use the Restream to share my screen and build a custom dashboard. So I will just do that on a future time so I can show you how to set up the ideal scenario. And I can do a custom dashboard if you're optimizing for leads and a custom dashboard if you're optimizing for e-commerce. So I will definitely do that. Thank you very much for supporting me and like being here to encourage me, especially when someone came to my door. This was fun and I appreciate you all. You're awesome. Have a great rest of your day.